What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you a channel first for the brand new TCG exclusive MimiGhouls. So MimiGhouls are a brand new TCG art type which do rely on flip effects. Now obviously that seems a little bit dated, however when you do combine them with some of the old cards, hello Beauregard, you will get a lot of interactions where you can actually flip these cards out during your turn and then also use its mainstay mechanic of being able to utilize stuff like your MimiGhoul Dragon and your MimiGhoul Master to flip these up during your opponent's turn on your opponent's side of the field, applying some sort of effect, and then they come back to your board, which is absolutely insane. So before we get into this profile, massive, and I can't say bigger shout out than ever, to Khalid K9776. So they were the ones that actually said, hey, have you checked out Beauregard and these two other cards? And I was like, no, I thought everyone was going to be going down the Soul and Lunar route because that is the only card that we have that is a quick effect that can be utilized during our turn and our opponent's turn to flip monsters face up and face down. And I was like, nope, check out Beauregard and these two other cards that I'll show you in the profile. And then they also gave me a demo combo for the deck as well, which is completely insane, and I'll show you that at the end of the video as well. So massive shout out to Khalid, thank you so much for this one. If there are any questions, hopefully they'll be able to see this video and comment down below. If not, I'll reach out to them and see if we can get any more of their thoughts. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, we're going to dive headfirst into this brand new TCG exclusive, the MimiGhouls. Now, you might all think that your best starter is going to be your MimiGhoul Master. Well, you'd be wrong. Your best starter is going to be your MimiGhoul Dragon. So, all the MimiGhouls have a flip effect. This one is, if it is the main phase, apply these effects in sequence. Destroy all face-up monsters you control except MimiGhoul monsters, and then give control of this card to your opponent. Now, obviously, you don't want this set on your side of the field. The idea is that it has a second effect, that during your main phase, you get to special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field in face-down defense position. If this card is normal or special, you get to add a MimiGhoul spell or trap from the deck to the hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. Now obviously the idea is that you're going to want to give this to your opponent, then you're going to be able to flip it during your opponent's turn with something like your MimiGhoul Master, and in doing so it then destroys your opponent's entire monster lineup and then comes back to your board. But you can also use it as your main normal summon because you normal summon this and it will get you direct access to probably one of your best spells in the form of the MimiGhoul Maker. The MimiGhoul Maker will be part of the combo later on that I'll show you, but the idea is that you're going to give your opponent a MimiGhoul monster or ideally a flip monster, and then you're going to be able to add a MimiGhoul monster and then special summon one down as well. The next card that we're going to be talking about is the MimiGhoul Archfiend. Now at the moment I'm playing all of the MimiGhouls at free, but you might not need to do that as we go on. And keeping in mind that this is just the first wave of support that this deck has received. So Archfiend again will have the same effect that during the main phase you get to special summon it to your opponent's field in face down defense position, but its flip effects are as follows. Your opponent draws one card, so keep in mind that we'll be putting this on our opponent's board, so we will be drawing one more card, and then you send a card from the hand to the graveyard. So again, that would apply to your opponent. So you give this to your opponent, we draw a card, they lose a card. Great success, and then this comes back over to our board for your free monster. Then the final super rare, of course, will be the MimiGhoul, well, super rare monster anyway at the moment, is your MimiGhoul Cerberus. They all have other little different effects as well that I did forget to mention, but your MimiGhoul Archfiend is, if this card is normal or special, you get to change a face-down monster on the field to face-up attack, and that's how you're going to be able to flip a Cerberus during your turn in order to trigger the effect. And keeping in mind that when these monsters get flipped face-up on your opponent's side of the field and then activate their effects, it's your opponent activating the effects. So Talents and Thrust are both live. So this one, again, flip effect, it allows you to banish the top 3 cards of your deck. So again, your opponent will have to banish the 3 cards of their deck. And then you special summon one of your banished monsters to your opponent's field in defense. So you get another free monster. And then on top of that, you give control of this card back to your opponent. It's effect that if it is normal or special, or just generally on its board, you can only use each effect once per turn. Your opponent just cannot target face-up spells you control with card effects. So a little bit more defensive. Like the ideal one that you're going to want to have on your board would of course be the Archfiend to flip, and then your Dragon to search out your spell. You're not really going to want to normal summon the Cerberus. This is the one you're going to want to give to your opponent more times than not, which this might be the one that I could highly expect being cut down to 2, but it's actually quite important in the combo for now. And then of course you've got the ultra rare of the set, or 2 ultra rares, but your first monster, and that is of course the MimiGhoul Monster. So this one can't be destroyed by battle or card effect while you control any face down monster, or if you control a MimiGhoul monster other than itself. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is normal or special, you get to add a MimiGhoul monster from the deck to the hand, except itself, and then during your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you can change one face down monster on the field to face up attack position. Now it's a shame that it's specifically during the main phase. I would have much rather have seen this be during your opponent's main phase. I would have much rather seen this be during either main phase as a quick effect, but unfortunately it does make you kind of play more so during your opponent's turn than anything else. And this is why it's not the ideal starter in comparison to Dragon, because Dragon can lead you to Master, Master can lead you to Dragon, but you can't get Dragon to your board. So very basically you just go, okay cool, normal summon Master, search out Dragon, give Dragon to your opponent, pass turn, let your opponent build up a board, activate Master, flip it, and then go from there. But it's very easy for your opponent to just flip the Dragon their turn, and then the Dragon would just try and destroy everything, which nothing would exist, and then come back to your board. So there's a little bit of give and take, which is why it's so important with the combo at the end, that Dragon is your one that you normal summon, and everything else is what gets special summoned afterwards. Then the other ultra rare of the set is the MimiGhoul Dungeon. So this is a field spell that MimiGhoul monsters you control that were not normal or special this turn gain their attack equal to their original defense. And any player who controls a face down monster cannot normal summon monsters, nor declare an attack with monsters that were special summoned this turn. So obviously it's a nice little bit of a slow, like a lose one turn in a sense, because obviously you give your opponent a face down defensive monster, which means they cannot normal summon, which means they need to flip it face up. And then on top of that, any monster that they special summon cannot declare an attack that was special summoned that turn. So it means they can't attack with all their link monsters and everything else. So it does kind of put them in a bit of a situation where they need to get rid of the dungeon. If that wasn't enough, during your main phase you get to add a MimiGhoul monster from the deck or graveyard to the hand. You can only use each effect once per turn, but the best thing about this is it's not on activation, so it does mean that as long as this stays on the board, you're just going to be able to go, okay cool, search out a MimiGhoul the next turn, and then try and repeat the same process. And then the best card in my entire opinion, which is what lets you play the Flame Sorcerer if you wanted to, is the MimiGhoul Maker. So you reveal 2 flip monsters with different names in your deck, your opponent randomly picks one for you to special summon to their field in face down defense position, and you add the other to the hand. Then you can special summon one MimiGhoul monster from your hand. If your opponent special summons a monster except during the damage step, you get to banish this card from the graveyard to target a face down defense position monster your opponent controls and change it to face up attack or defense. You can only use one MimiGhoul Maker effect per turn and only once that turn. But the idea is that this will search you out 2 MimiGhouls. It's also how you search out the hero and how you search out the Flame Sorceress, because of the idea is this will special the Flame Sorceress to your opponent's board, but it is a bit risky on that one because it's like a 50-50, and if you get the wrong card then it doesn't really work, whereas just being able to utilize this in a pure MimiGhoul build does give you a bit more utility in order to get to your Archfiend, to get to your Dragon, to get to your Master and everything else in between. Now unfortunately the Master isn't a flip. So I take that back. So the Master isn't a flip, so it'll actually only get you to your Cerberus, your Archfiend, and your Dragon. I keep forgetting that this isn't a flip monster, which kind of makes sense, but then also doesn't a little bit. So that's it for the MimiGhouls themselves. The cards that we're going to use to help us extend our plays, give us a bit more consistency, are as follows. Now I'm going to use Astral Kuriboh. Now a lot of you straight away are going to go, what the hell is Astral Kuriboh for? Well, Astral Kuriboh actually helps you get to the other 2 extra deck monsters that give you the ability to flip cards up to face up. And that is of course going to be the number 13 Embodiment of Crime and number 31 Embodiment of Punishment. So for those who are unfamiliar with Astral Kuriboh, it allows you to reveal a number XYZ monster in your extra deck. This gets summoned down as its rank, which obviously it would stay as a level 1, and then if you do, this level becomes the revealed monsters level. Also, while face up in the monster zone, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except number XYZs, and you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. A number XYZ that was used this card as material gains the following effect: that it can't be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects. So it means on both of the Embodiment of Punishment and Crime, you don't need to have the other one to have the protection effect. So what are these 2 really old cards that came out in Premium Gold number 1? Well, number 13 is generic 2 level 1s. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you get to detach an XYZ from this card, change all monsters your opponent controls to face out attack position. Also, all monsters your opponent currently controls must attack this card this turn if able. While you control number 31, it gains the additional effect that it can't be destroyed by battle or card effect while it has XYZ material, and your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from attacks involving this card. This one does the exact same thing, so it has the quick effect to flip all of your opponent's monsters to face out attack position. They all must attack this card where able, so obviously you have both of them on the board, you set up a mini lock, and on top of that as well, your opponent would take any battle damage you would have taken from attacks involving this card, and it can't be destroyed by battle or card effect while it has XYZ material. So obviously it'll gain that additional ability of not being able to destroy by battle or card effect when you use Astral Kuriboh, but more times than not, you can just very easily use a Dragon or of course a Cerberus or an Archfiend, so you've got loads of consistency to get to it anyway. Carrying on, we move into the hand traps. As you noticed, this deck doesn't care about its graveyard, so why not play the strongest anti-meta hand trap for this entire format in the form of Dimension Shifter. You can also play Infinite Impermanence, you can play Triple Ash Blossom, You can play Nibiru. You have so much free real estate right now. It is crazy. We're also going to be playing Droll. Whether you're going to be using this as a cross-out target, should you want to play cross-out, or if you wanted to take it out for DD Crow, it really is up to you. 1 Call Below Grave to deal with pesky hand traps that evolve in you. 1 Terraforming to get you into the field spell because it is very important. And then of course you've got your talents, your tactics, your talents, and then other additional targets. So see, at the moment, Frost can get you talents, it can get you terraforming, but I also thought it'd be really kind of cool to have just 1 blowout card for going second and 1 blowout card for going first. Because the idea is you could actually get Dark Rule No More, activate it, and then if your opponent had cards that couldn't be destroyed by battle or anything like that, then you can just give your opponent a dragon, flip the dragon face up, and then destroy their entire board. Great success. The D barrier can very easily be the destructive Daruma cannon, which is something I am highly considering because it just then resets your opponent's entire board, and it also resets yours. But you don't really want to be flipping your MimiGhoul's face up, because when you do that, you give your opponent all the benefits and then summon them to your opponent's board, and you don't really want to be giving them more monsters. So if there are any different spaces that you wanted to put in for these two, you can very easily sub them out for something that is going to be more specific for that particular format. It really is up to you and what you have availability to you. The Frost and talents aren't mandatory. I feel that the talents is quite helpful because being able to give your opponent an effect monster, flipping it up during their turn, during your turn, and then forcing them to play talents, it technically means that when you activate something like the Archfiend would rip a card from their hand, the talents could then rip another card from their hand, and then if you did play the Flame Princess and you gave that to them and then flipped it face up, they'd also need to lose 2 more cards. So they've then got to try and break your board with 2 cards. Now, obviously not ideal, but I am just saying you can technically do a mini hand loop, if not a full-on hand loop, with this build. So, because the extra deck is so free, bar these 3 monsters in the form of your number 31, your number 13, and your Beauregard, you have the flexibility to play whatever you want. So for those of you unfamiliar with the Beauregard, it cannot be destroyed by card effects, good success, and then once per turn you get to send 1 card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard to special summon from either graveyard to your field 1 monster that was destroyed and sent there this turn, but you negate its effects. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you get to target a monster on the field and change it to face-up defense position. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect activation. So that's just how you've got a quick effect to be able to go, okay, cool, target, flip. Target, flip, let's go. I would probably play more of this if I had access to it and probably play more of these. But the idea is, because I've got the flexibility to do so now with the extra deck, we're just going to be playing a couple of rank 1s in the form of the Lyrilusk as well as the Fuko. Just when you are in that Tenpai matchup, you can wall up a little bit. And on top of that, both of these can then lead you into downwards, which we are playing 2 of, because then they can both lead you into Zeus's. But again, these are the flex areas. If I had another Beauregard, I might consider taking a Zeus out, and if I had another 13 or 31, I would consider taking out a Downward. The last XYZ we play is the 1 Baguska, and again, I know a lot of you are going to be like, well, how the hell are you making this? Surely you're not overlaying 2 Masters, and that's correct. We are not going to overlay 2 Masters, we're going to overlay a Master and an Astral Karibo. Because remember, Astral Karibo just needs to reveal a number monster from the extra deck, and then it will copy its rank, so it can copy a level 4. So if you've already done everything you need with a Master, you flipped it up, you've given yourself back your Dragon or anything else you wanted to, and you're like, okay, cool, my opponent has stopped me of everything I needed to, I just wanted to use the Archfiend to draw a card and rip my card, and then my opponent drolled me, for example, and I've got no other plays to make. Well, you can go, okay, cool, Astral Karibo, summon down, go into Baguska and slow the game down. But again, this is a flex spot should you want to take it out. For the Link monsters, of course, we've got the Ashura, because all of your MimiGhouls are Earths. And if you really wanted to, you could play the brand new trap card, the Dominus Purge, because Dominus Purge doesn't lock you out of Earths, but it will lock you out of Fires, Darks, and I believe it's Waters, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, which would mean that you can't play Ash Blossom, but not the end of the world on that one. And then, of course, for the other generic links we've got is the 1 IP Masquerena, followed up by the Moon Closed World, followed up by Underworld Goddess, and then, of course, Appaloosa. Now, of course, you can very easily put in an SP Little Knight in here if you want to. Another alternative to SP Little Knight would be Nightmare Unicorn. I wanted to try and keep it on a slightly tiny budget, just because this is a brand new MimiGhoul kind of deck. You can pick up an entire MimiGhoul core for like 20 quid, which is why talents, more so Frost, is not an absolute mainstay staple in this, and you could cut them out if you wanted to, and it would probably take the deck down to a 40 card deck. If you were to do that, you'd also cut out the Dark Ruler and the D barrier, and by cutting those out, you then open up the board space to add in crossouts if you wanted to. You can add in a 1-for-1, and you could even consider Pot of Prosperities, because the only card that this really clashes with is the Archfiend. But as you'll see in the combo that I'm about to show you now, you kind of need to use your Archfiend to give you a bit more advantage, but more times than not, you're probably going to be using the Archfiend less so to flip it on your opponent's board, but more so to normal summon it or special summon it down, and then gain its effect to flip the monster your opponent has face up. So that's it for the profile. Now I'm going to reset, zoom out the board, and show you that all-important combo to get you started with MimiGhouls. Now the one card you're going to need is the MimiGhoul Dragon, which is why it is your most ideal starter. Now it does require a little bit of a luck because there does become a point where it's a 50-50 chance of whether your opponent gets the right card or not, but then you also have the ability to change this up. If you do get the field spell, you can actually control what your opponent gets. Now you'll see that as we go through the combo. The idea is you're going to normal summon down your MimiGhoul Dragon, and you're going to use this effect to add a MimiGhoul spell or trap from the deck to the hand. So obviously the one you're going to want to go for is of course going to be your MimiGhoul Maker. You're going to activate the Maker, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to reveal a MimiGhoul Cerberus and a MimiGhoul Archfiend. Now this is where the 50-50 kind of comes into play, because what you want is you want them to get the Cerberus. And the reason you're going to want to get them to get the Cerberus face down is because that means you get the Archfiend. You can then special summon down the Archfiend, which will then in turn allow you to target the Cerberus, flip the Cerberus face up, which will trigger its effect to banish the top 3 from your opponent's deck. And then another bit of luck comes into play because it needs to banish a monster, and in doing so that monster will come to your board, and on top of that you then resolve the Cerberus to come to your board. So what that now does is it now gives you the ability to go into a generic Link 2 if you want to, for something like an IP Masquerena or an Underworld Goddess if you're going second. It can also work your way up into a Beauregard, which will then give you that ability as that quick effect to flip more monsters. Now what you need to remember is that we haven't used any of these effects in the hand to give them to our opponent. So if we did open up another Cerberus, if we did open up an Archfiend, then it wouldn't matter what the MimiGhoul gave your opponent. As long as you had the Cerberus, you'd go, okay, cool, Cerberus effect in hand, special summon it to your field, then still use the Archfiend to be special summoned from the hand through the back of the Maker. So there's loads of different ways that this can variate, but the idea is that straight away you've got the ability, if you wanted to make a generic rank 1 being one of your wherever it may be, being one of your embodiment of crimes, and then keep in mind that this has a quick effect to flip all of your opponent's monsters face up. So if you gave your opponent a dragon, if you gave your opponent a Archfiend, you could use the effect of this, flip it face up, and then like I said, if it was a dragon or if it was an Archfiend, which does turn it into a 2-card combo, but the idea is they would then be forced to give you that card. So let's say it was an Archfiend, it gets flipped face up, not only would they lose a card in hand and we would draw a card, but this would then come to our board, you'd overlay the dragon and the Archfiend, and this would be when you're able to get the second embodiment of crime. So you're going to get, punishment. So you're going to have both the embodiments on the board, you'd still have that free monster that your opponent gave you. So again, if you were able to then give your opponent another one, which was the dragon, you can then use embodiment of punishment, flip it face up, it would then come to your board, and then you'd be able to use that monster plus the monster that they've already given you, and then add to your board something like an IP Masquerena if you wanted to. If there's an earth monster in their graveyard, you could obviously use that with the Assure, but the idea is you've now got this, which then would lead you into an SP or a Nightmare Unicorn and everything else. Plus you'd still have the 4 more cards that you're playing around with. It's not perfect, but it is just a starting point for you to be able to see what one card can do with this deck, and then remind that you have those additional 4 cards, which can then be your Cerberuses, they can be the Archfiends, they can be the cards that you hard summon to your opponent's board. It does change it up massively. Not to mention, if you really wanted to, when you can make a generic Link 2 in this day and age, if you have access to the Fiendsmith, of course, all of this play would then, rather than going into an IP Masquerena, can then start the Fiendsmith combo. In doing so, the best thing about a Fiendsmith combo is you can actually work your way into a cross sheet. The cross sheet can then be able to be triggered by going into a Neko Crypt. The Neko Crypt, as long as you have made a Beatrice beforehand and sent the master to the graveyard, will be able to trigger the cross sheet to bring the master back from the graveyard. I didn't want to show you anything involving the Fiendsmith because obviously at the moment Fiendsmith is like 300 quid just for the engine. I wanted to show you what this deck could do on its own, and I just feel that it's really kind of cool that with certain scenarios you can definitely set yourself up with a Link 2 monster plus one of the rank 1s, or of course you can work your way all the way into a Beauregard off of the back of the MimiGhoul Dragon and a little bit of luck off of the Maker. But then if you don't get access to the Maker, all you need to do is hard open up the Archfiend, hard open up the Cerberus, hard open up a second dragon, hard open up the Maker, hard open up the field spell, and you would still get everything you needed. So you still have huge amounts of consistency in order to get exactly where you need to get to, because opening up any mixture of these cards will get you to that same out goal. Because the idea would be, okay, cool, I've opened up Dragon and Dungeon. I'd activate Dungeon, I'd get myself the Archfiend, so I've got that guaranteed in my hand. I'd summon down the Dragon, Dragon would search me out the Maker, you'd then activate the Maker, revealing a Cerberus and another Archfiend. You'd then give your opponent one of these, let's say worst case scenario, they got the Archfiend. You'd still be able to summon down the Archfiend from your hand, you'd still be able to trigger to flip this, your opponent would still lose one card and you'd still get the Archfiend. Of course, if you would then still also be opened up with the Cerberus, so you can then special summon the Cerberus to your opponent's board face down. You'd then be able to overlay both of these. You'd then be able to go into an embodiment. An embodiment's effect will then be able to detach to use this effect. This would then flip the Cerberus face up. The Cerberus effect will now trigger, giving yourself the Cerberus, and then hopefully giving you another monster from your opponent. And then this then gives you the other rank 1 as well. So now you've got both the rank 1s set up, good to go. You've got the 1/3 monster from your opponent. Or if you really wanted to, rather than making the rank 1, you just put this. Let's say the dragon was in attack, we'll leave the Cerberus in defense, we'll use the monster our opponent gave us and one more, go into an IP Masquerena, and then during our opponent's turn we've got SP or we've got Unicorn, plus we've got the ability that our opponent has to attack this, so you put it into defense, and then they're going to have to use their first attack on this and you're going to be able to play it through. Not to mention, of course, you've got the MimiGhoul dungeon in rotation, so even if you wanted to leave them with a monster, you're still able to kind of slow them down and lock them down a little bit as well. Anyway, that is it for the entire profile and the combo. Hope this is giving you a nice introductory lesson, I suppose, into the MimiGhouls. It's definitely a fun deck. I can see the potential of it. I mean, quite like a lot of people, my initial thoughts on this deck was, wow, this is pretty garbo. But then the more and more I looked into it, and then of course the massive interaction from Khalid kind of made me go, oh, damn, this is actually really kind of fun. So it's definitely something to look into. I feel that you can pick up a core for like 15 to 20 quid. I feel that's well worth it. I think it's just a little fun deck you can play around with. And you never know. Like I've said, with all TCG exclusives, between the 15 to 20 pound mark, in my opinion, is worth an investment because worst case scenario, the second wave is garbage, but once the second wave gets announced, the hype goes up a little bit. Everyone wants to get the first wave. They start paying like £2 to £3 per ultra rare. And when you've got 2 ultra rares straight away, you can balance your money back out or you're going to make a little bit of profit. And then the best case scenario is the new support and the OCG exclusive that they get is incredibly broken and busted because they wanted to kind of set up their own flip art type to make it relevant. And then straight away you're in the stonks because all of your money, all of your values of the original ultra rares are going to go up through the roof. And it's very rare that TCG exclusives get reprinted as consistently and as early as the main deck kind of cards that are already there anyway. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, massive shout out to Khalid again as well, by the way. Stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.